The November wind cut through Maya's thin jacket like a knife. She pulled it tighter around herself as she walked behind the convenience store, dragging two bulging trash bags toward the dumpster. It was nearly 9 at night, and the alley was dark except for one flickering streetlight that barely worked. This wasn't the best neighborhood in Chicago, but it was where she'd found work, and at 15 years old, she needed every dollar she could get. Maya had been living at St. Catherine's Home for Girls since she was 3 years old. She didn't remember much about how she got there. The staff told her that her mother had left her at a hospital with a note that simply said, "Please take care of her." No name, no explanation, nothing. Growing up without parents had taught Maya to be tough, to not ask for things she couldn't have, and to work hard for everything. The other girls at the home either pitied her or ignored her, but Maya had learned to keep her head down and focus on surviving. Working at the store helped her save money for when she'd turn 18 and age out of the system. She'd heard the horror stories from older girls who'd left with nowhere to go. No money, no support. Maya was determined that wouldn't be her. Every week she tucked away most of her paycheck in an envelope hidden under her mattress at the home. She dreamed of having her own small apartment someday, maybe finishing high school, possibly even going to college. It seemed impossible most days, but dreaming was free. She lifted the first trash bag, grunting with effort as she tossed it into the dumpster. The metal clanged loudly in the quiet alley. As she reached for the second bag, she heard something, a sound so faint she almost thought she'd imagined it. Maya froze, listening. There it was again, a soft whimpering like a kitten or a puppy in distress. She looked around the alley, expecting to see a stray animal. Nothing. The sound came again, and this time Maya's heart skipped a beat. It was coming from inside the dumpster. Without thinking, she grabbed an empty crate from beside the store's back door and dragged it over. She climbed up, her hands gripping the cold metal edge, and peered inside. The smell hit her first, a mixture of rotting food and something else she couldn't identify. She used her phone's flashlight to see better, moving the beam across the garbage bags and cardboard boxes. Then she saw it. A bundle of cloth near the corner of the dumpster, and from that bundle came the weakest cry she'd ever heard. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "Oh my God," she whispered. Her hands were shaking as she reached down, pushing aside trash to get to the bundle. When she pulled back the dirty blanket, she saw a tiny face, reddish and wrinkled, eyes squeezed shut. A baby. Someone had thrown away a baby like it was garbage. Maya didn't remember climbing into the dumpster. She didn't remember how she managed to lift the baby out while balancing on the edge. All she knew was that suddenly she was standing in the alley, holding this impossibly small human being, and the baby was so cold. Too cold. Her manager, Mr. Peterson, found her there 2 minutes later, crying and trying to wrap her jacket around the infant. He took one look at the situation and pulled out his phone, calling 911 while Maya just stood there, unable to let go. She kept thinking that if she'd thrown out the trash 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, if she'd been in a hurry and hadn't heard the crying, if she'd ignored the sound, this baby would have died, would have frozen to death in a dumpster behind a convenience store, and no one would have known. The ambulance arrived within minutes, though it felt like hours. Paramedics wrapped the baby in thermal blankets and checked her vital signs while asking Maya questions she could barely answer. "Where did you find her? How long was she in there? Did you see anyone?" Maya's mind was blank. She just kept staring at the baby's tiny fingers, no bigger than matchsticks, curled into little fists. "Is she going to be okay?" Maya asked, her voice small. One of the paramedics, a woman with kind eyes, looked at her and nodded. "You saved her life, sweetheart. You did good." They took the baby to the hospital, and Mr. Peterson drove Maya back to St. Catherine's. She was supposed to feel relieved, supposed to go back to her normal life, but she couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about that baby girl lying in the hospital all alone. No one to hold her. No one to tell her she mattered, that she was wanted. Maya knew that feeling too well. The next day, she asked Mrs. Patterson, the director at St. Catherine's, if she could visit the baby at the hospital. Mrs. Patterson seemed surprised but agreed to make some calls. By afternoon, Maya was sitting on a bus heading to Chicago General Hospital with a permission slip and strict instructions to be back by dinner. The nurses at the hospital remembered her. They brought her to the NICU where the baby was being monitored. She was so tiny in that clear plastic bassinet, with wires and tubes attached to her, but she was alive. She was breathing, A nurse named Rita told Maya that the baby was doing better than expected, that she was a fighter. Does she have a name? Maya asked. Rita shook her head. Not yet. Social Services is handling her case. They're trying to find her mother, but so far no leads. Maya reached through the opening in the bassinet and gently touched the baby's hand. The tiny fingers wrapped around her pinky finger, gripping with surprising strength. Something shifted inside Maya's chest, something she couldn't quite name. It felt like recognition, like looking in a mirror and seeing not what you are but what you could become. She visited every day that week, then every week for the next month. The nurses got used to seeing her. They let her help with feeding sometimes, showed her how to hold the baby properly, how to burp her. Rita told her that the baby was going to be released soon, placed in foster care since the police investigation had turned up nothing. No mother, no family, no one looking for her. She's like me, Maya said quietly one afternoon watching the baby sleep. Nobody wanted her either. Rita put a hand on Maya's shoulder. That's not true, honey. You wanted her. You saved her. That counts for something. On the day the baby was discharged, Maya came to say goodbye. She'd been thinking about this moment for weeks, dreading it. She held the baby one last time, memorizing her face, the way her nose crinkled when she yawned, the small birthmark on her left shoulder. The social worker, a tired-looking woman with a kind smile, told Maya the baby was going to a good foster home, that she'd be taken care of. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, that somehow their stories were connected in a way she didn't understand yet. As she handed the baby over, she made a promise. She whispered it so quietly that no one else could hear. I'm going to come back for you. When I'm old enough, when I have a place of my own, I'm going to find you. I promise. The baby's eyes opened for just a second, looking right at Maya, and then she was gone, carried away to a life Maya could only hope would be better than the one she'd been born into. Walking back to St. Catherine's that day, Maya felt different. She'd always been alone, always focused on just surviving. But now she had a purpose. She had 3 years until she turned 18. 3 years to figure out how to keep a promise to a baby who didn't even know her name. 3 years to build a life big enough for two. That night, Maya took out her hidden envelope of money and counted it. $47.16. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She put it back under her mattress and pulled out a notebook. At the top of a blank page, she wrote one word in careful letters. Hope. That's what the baby needed. That's what they both needed. And somehow Maya was going to make sure they got it. 3 years felt like forever when Maya first made her promise. But time has a funny way of moving fast when you're working towards something that matters. Maya threw herself into everything. She kept her job at the convenience store and picked up weekend shifts at a diner 2 blocks from St. Catherine's. Between school and work, she barely had time to sleep, but she didn't care. Every dollar she earned went into that envelope, and every night before bed, she'd count her savings and calculate how many months until she could afford a security deposit on an apartment. The social workers thought she was crazy when she first told them her plan. At 16, sitting in a mandatory life skills class for girls who were about to age out of the system, Maya had raised her hand and said she wanted to become a foster parent. The instructor had actually laughed, thinking it was a joke. But when Maya explained about the baby, about her promise, the room had gone quiet. Honey, the instructor had said gently, fostering requires a stable income, a home, references. You're barely going to be able to take care of yourself at 18. Maybe focus on that first? But Maya didn't give up. She researched everything. She learned that you had to be 21 to foster in Illinois, which meant she had 6 years, not 3. 6 years to build a life stable enough to bring Hope home. The timeline shifted, but the promise didn't. She managed to track down which foster home Hope was in through a sympathetic social worker who remembered her from the hospital. The worker couldn't give Maya the address, but she could pass along letters. Maya wrote them every month. She told Hope about her day, about funny things that happened at work, about the dreams she had for their future. She didn't know if anyone was reading them to Hope, didn't even know if the foster parents knew about her, but writing the letters made Hope feel real, made the promise feel possible. When Maya turned 18, St. Catherine's gave her what they gave all the girls: a garbage bag for her belongings, a bus pass, and a list of homeless shelters. She'd expected this. She had $812 saved, and she'd already lined up a room in a boarding house that cost $60 a week. It was in a rough neighborhood, and she'd be sharing a bathroom with 6 other people, but it was shelter and it was hers. The first night in that tiny room, sitting on a mattress that smelled like mildew, Maya pulled out all her letters to Hope and reread them. She'd been writing for 3 years. 3 years of one-sided conversations with a little girl who didn't know she existed, and she still had 3 more years to wait before she could even apply to foster. But Maya was learning something important about herself. She was stubborn. When she wanted something badly enough, she didn't stop until she got it. So she enrolled in community college, taking evening classes in early childhood education. During the day, she worked as a clerk at a medical supply company. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than the convenience store, and it had health insurance. She was building a resume, creating a paper trail that showed she was responsible, employed, stable. At 19, she moved to a better apartment, a studio that actually had its own bathroom and a small kitchen. She furnished it piece by piece from thrift stores and garage sales. Every choice she made, she thought about Hope. She bought a small bookshelf and filled it with children's books. She picked up a stuffed bear at a yard sale and put it on her bed. She was building a home for someone she hadn't seen in 4 years, someone who wouldn't remember her, but who Maya thought about every single day. The letters continued. Maya told Hope about starting college, about her new apartment, about the neighbor's cat that kept sneaking in through her window. She told her about the hard days and the good ones, about feeling lonely sometimes but never giving up. She told her that soon they'd be together, and none of this waiting would matter anymore. When Maya finally turned 21, she had everything ready. A 2-bedroom apartment, a stable job, good references from her employer and her professors, and a savings account with enough money to prove she could provide for a child. She'd completed all the required training for foster parents. She'd passed background checks and home inspections. And then she'd asked her social worker to help her find Hope. The system wasn't designed for reunions like this. Hope was 5 years old now in her 3rd foster home. The first 2 hadn't worked out for various reasons, and she was currently with a family that had 4 other foster kids. They were good people, overwhelmed but caring. When Maya's social worker contacted them about her interest in fostering Hope, they were actually relieved. 5 kids were too many, and Hope was the youngest, the one who needed the most attention. Maya's hands shook when she got the call. They were arranging a meeting. She was finally going to see Hope again, and this time, she might actually get to keep her promise. The meeting was at a park on a sunny afternoon in May. Maya arrived 30 minutes early, too nervous to wait at home. She sat on a bench watching families play, wondering if Hope would like her, if a 5-year-old could understand what Maya was trying to do, if this whole crazy plan was about to fall apart. Then she saw them. The foster mother, a heavy-set woman with a tired smile walking hand in hand with a little girl in pink sneakers and pigtails. Hope. She was so much bigger than Maya remembered, of course. Not a baby anymore, but a real kid, with skinny legs and curious eyes and a backpack shaped like a butterfly. Maya stood up, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The foster mother said something to Hope, and the little girl looked up at Maya with those same eyes, the ones that had gripped her finger in the hospital 5 years ago. "Hi," Maya said, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. "I'm Maya." Hope studied her for a moment, then said, "Miss Roberts says you knew me when I was a baby." "I did," Maya said, kneeling down to be at eye level. "I found you, and I've been waiting a really long time to see you again." The first few visits were supervised, just an hour at a time at the park or at a McDonald's play place. Hope was cautious at first, quieter than Maya had expected. The foster mother mentioned that Hope had some attachment issues, that moving between homes had made her wary of new people. But slowly, over weeks of visits, something started to shift. Hope started saving drawings for Maya, crude crayon pictures of houses and flowers and stick figures. She started asking when Maya was coming next, running to the car when she saw her pull up. And Maya noticed things that broke her heart. How Hope's clothes never quite fit right, how she had a habit of hoarding food in her pockets, probably from never being sure when the next meal would come. How she'd flinch sometimes at loud noises or sudden movements. 6 months of visits, home inspections, interviews, and paperwork later, Hope moved in with Maya. The social worker brought her over on a Tuesday morning with 2 grocery bags of belongings. That was it. 5 years of life fitting into 2 bags. Maya had spent weeks getting the second bedroom ready, painting it a soft yellow, buying a real bed with a princess comforter, filling the closet with clothes that actually fit. Hope stood in the doorway of her new room, not saying anything. Maya worried she'd done it wrong, that it was too much or not enough, that Hope was scared or overwhelmed. Then Hope walked over to the bed, picked up the stuffed bear Maya had bought years ago, and hugged it to her chest. "Is this really mine?" she asked. "Can I keep it even if I have to leave?" Maya knelt down beside her. "You're not going to leave, sweetheart. This is your home now. Everything here is yours to keep." Hope looked at her with those serious eyes. "Forever?" "Forever," Maya promised, and she meant it with every cell in her body. The first few months were hard. Hope had nightmares almost every night, waking up crying and confused about where she was. She was used to chaos, to crowded rooms and fighting for attention, and the quiet of Maya's apartment made her nervous. Maya learned to leave a nightlight on, to check on her multiple times before bed, to hold her when the bad dreams came. Hope also didn't know how to just be a kid. She'd ask permission for everything, apologize constantly, and act surprised when Maya did normal parent things like packing her lunch or helping with homework. It hurt Maya's heart to realize how little stability this little girl had known, how much she expected to be disappointed or abandoned. But there were good moments too. The first time Hope called her mama by accident, then looked terrified like she'd done something wrong. Maya had cried and told her it was okay. She could call her whatever felt right. The first time Hope laughed, really laughed, at a silly cartoon. The first parent-teacher conference where Hope's teacher said she was doing well, making friends, coming out of her shell. Maya was exhausted all the time. Working full-time, going to school part-time, and parenting didn't leave much room for anything else. But she wouldn't have traded it for anything. On the hard days when money was tight and Hope was having a meltdown about something small and Maya felt like she was drowning, she'd remember that tiny baby in the dumpster. She'd remember making that promise. And she'd remind herself that she'd done it. She'd kept her word. The adoption process took another 1.5 years. More interviews, more inspections, more paperwork. But on Hope's 7th birthday, it was finally official. In a courtroom with a judge who smiled and congratulated them, Maya became Hope's legal mother. They went out for ice cream afterward, just the two of them. And Hope got chocolate all over her face while telling Maya about the birthday party they were planning at school. "Mama," Hope said, swinging her legs under the table, "can I tell the kids at school how you found me?" Maya had always been honest with her about their story. Hope knew she'd been found as a baby, knew Maya had saved her and then came back for her. She knew they'd both grown up without parents, that they were building their family from scratch. "Of course you can," Maya said. "It's your story too." Hope nodded seriously, then grinned. "I think it's a cool story. Like superheroes." Maya laughed, reaching over to wipe chocolate from Hope's chin. "Maybe it is. They weren't superheroes, though. They were just two people who'd been thrown away by the world and had found each other in the darkness. Two people who decided that being unwanted didn't mean being unworthy of love. Two people building something neither of them had ever had before. A home." The years passed faster than Maya could have imagined. Hope grew from a cautious 7-year-old into a confident teenager who played basketball, got mostly B's in school, and had a laugh that could light up a room. Maya had finished her nursing degree when Hope was 10, finally landing a stable position at Chicago General Hospital, the same hospital where Hope had been treated as a newborn. Life wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and they'd built it together. Hope's 15th birthday was supposed to be special. They'd planned a small party with her friends from school, ordered her favorite pizza, and Maya had saved up to buy her the sneakers she'd been wanting for months. The morning of her birthday, Hope had basketball practice, same as every Saturday. Maya was working the day shift at the hospital, planning to leave early to set up for the party. The call came at 2 in the afternoon. Maya was restocking supplies in the ICU when her phone rang. Hope's coach. Her hands went cold before she even answered. "Maya, don't panic," but Hope collapsed during practice. "The ambulance is bringing her to Chicago General right now." Maya didn't remember running through the hospital halls. She didn't remember pushing through the emergency room doors or demanding to know where her daughter was. She just remembered the sound of her own heartbeat drowning out everything else, the metallic taste of fear in her mouth, and the prayer she kept repeating in her head. "Please, please, please let her be okay." They found Hope in an exam room. conscious but pale, looking younger than her 15 years as she lay on the gurney in her basketball uniform. Maya grabbed her hand, feeling the clamminess of her skin. "Mama, I'm okay," Hope said, but her voice was weak. "I just got dizzy." The ER doctor, someone Maya knew from working in the hospital, pulled her aside while nurses continued monitoring Hope. Dr. Patel was usually calm, but Maya could see the concern in her eyes. "We ran some initial tests. Her blood pressure is elevated and there are some irregularities in her blood work. We need to do more testing, but Maya, it could be her kidneys. We're admitting her for observation." The next 3 days were a nightmare of tests and waiting. Maya barely left Hope's side, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair next to her bed, holding her hand through blood draws and CT scans and ultrasounds. Hope tried to be brave, cracking jokes with the nurses and complaining about the terrible hospital food, but Maya could see the fear in her eyes every time another doctor came in with more questions. On the 3rd day, Dr. Patel came in with a nephrologist, a kidney specialist named Dr. Chen. They sat down, which was never a good sign. Maya felt her whole body tense. "Hope has a rare genetic condition affecting her kidneys," Dr. Chen explained, her voice gentle but direct. "It's called Alport syndrome. It's progressive, which means it will get worse over time. Right now, her kidney function is at about 40%, which is why she's been feeling tired and got dizzy during practice." "What does that mean?" Hope asked, her voice small. "What happens to me?" Dr. Chen looked at her with kind eyes. "It means we need to manage this carefully. With medication and monitoring, we can slow the progression, but eventually you'll probably need a kidney transplant." The word transplant hung in the air like a bomb. Maya's medical training kicked in, running through everything she knew about kidney transplants, survival rates, waiting lists, complications. But underneath all that clinical knowledge was pure terror. This was her daughter, her Hope. "How long?" Maya asked. "How long before she needs a transplant?" "It's hard to say. Could be a year, could be 5 years. It depends on how well her remaining kidney function holds up and how she responds to treatment." They went home 2 days later with a bag full of medications and a schedule of follow-up appointments. Maya took a leave of absence from work, unable to focus on anything except making sure Hope took her pills on time, ate the right foods, drank enough water. Hope tried to go back to school, but she was exhausted all the time. Basketball was out of the question. She slept more than she was awake. Over the next 6 months, Hope's condition slowly deteriorated. The medications weren't working as well as they'd hoped. Dr. Chen had difficult conversations with them about the reality they were facing. Hope would need a transplant sooner rather than later. They put her on the waiting list, but Dr. Chen warned them that the average wait time was 3 to 5 years. Hope didn't have that long. "The best chance is a living donor," Dr. Chen explained during one appointment. "Family members are often the best match. Maya, we should test you first, of course." Maya had been prepared for this. She'd do anything for Hope, give her anything she had. A kidney? Easy. She'd give both if she could. The blood test was simple. Just a vial of blood and a week of waiting for results. Maya spent that week planning. She'd need time off work for the surgery, but it would be worth it. She'd be saving Hope's life again, just like she had 15 years ago when she pulled her from that dumpster. This was just another chapter in their story. Dr. Chen called her into her office alone for the results. That should have been Maya's first warning. Hope was in the waiting room playing on her phone, unaware of what was coming. "Maya, I'm so sorry. You're not a compatible match." The words didn't make sense at first. Maya just stared at Dr. Chen, waiting for her to elaborate, to explain that there was a mistake or another option. "What do you mean, not compatible?" "I'm her mother. Test me again." Dr. Chen's face was sympathetic. "We ran the test twice to be sure. Your blood type is different from Hope's and the tissue markers don't align. It happens sometimes even with biological parents. But Maya, Hope was adopted. Do you have any information about her biological family? A parent or sibling would have the best chance of being a match." Biological family. The words felt like a slap. Maya had spent 15 years being Hope's mother, being her everything, and now the one time it really mattered, biology was failing them. All those years of late nights and early mornings, of scraped knees and homework help and teenage drama, and she couldn't do the one thing that actually mattered. She couldn't save her. Maya sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before going back to get Hope, trying to compose herself. Hope took one look at her face and knew. "You're not a match," Hope said quietly. "No, baby, I'm not. But we're going to find someone who is. We're going to figure this out." That night, Maya pulled out every piece of paperwork she had from Hope's case. The police report from the night she was found, the social services files from her foster care years, the adoption papers. It was all there, the story of how Hope came into the world and into her life. But nowhere in those papers was a name. No mother, no father, no relatives. Just a baby in a dumpster and a cold November night. Maya had never wanted to find Hope's biological family before. She'd been afraid, maybe, that they'd come back and want her, that Maya would lose the only person she'd ever loved. But now finding them wasn't about fear or ownership. It was about survival. She called the detective who'd handled the original case, a man named Officer Rodriguez, who was now retired. He remembered the case, said it had bothered him for years that they never found the mother. He agreed to pull the old files, see if there was anything they'd missed. Maya contacted the social worker who'd placed Hope in foster care. She reached out to the hospital where Hope had been treated as a baby, asking if they'd kept any records of DNA or genetic testing. She created a Facebook page with Hope's story, posted it in local Chicago groups, shared it with everyone she knew. The story spread faster than she expected. Local news picked it up. Mother searches for daughter's biological family to save her life. Strangers shared it, commented with prayers and well wishes and their own stories of transplants and miracles. Maya's phone rang constantly with tips that led nowhere. People who thought they might know something but didn't. Hope watched all of this from the sidelines, getting weaker by the day. She had to drop out of school. Couldn't walk upstairs without getting winded. She spent most days on the couch watching TV or sleeping, and Maya could see the fear in her eyes even though Hope never complained. "Mama, what if we don't find anyone?" Hope asked one night when Maya was helping her to bed. "We will," Maya said firmly. "I found you once, didn't I? I'll find them too." But privately, Maya was terrified. Weeks turned into months with no real leads. Hope's kidney function continued to decline. They increased her medications, talked about starting dialysis soon. Dr. Chen tried to be optimistic, but Maya could read the worry in her face during appointments. Maya put up flyers in the neighborhood where she'd found Hope, covering a 10-block radius around that convenience store. She offered a reward for information. She hired a private investigator who specialized in finding missing persons, though she couldn't really afford it. She did interviews on local radio stations, told their story to anyone who would listen. Nothing worked. It was like Hope's biological mother had never existed, had simply disappeared into thin air after leaving her baby in that dumpster. Maya lay awake at night, going over every detail of that November night 15 years ago, trying to remember if she'd seen anything, anyone who might have been the mother. But she'd been a kid herself, just 15, focused on working and surviving. She hadn't been looking for clues. 4 months into the search, Hope was hospitalized again. Her kidney function had dropped to 15%. Dr. Chen said they needed to start dialysis immediately. Hope would come to the hospital 3 times a week, spend 4 hours hooked up to a machine that would do the work her kidneys couldn't. It would keep her alive. But it wasn't a solution. It was just buying time. Maya sat beside Hope's hospital bed, watching the dialysis machine pump blood through tubes and filters. Hope was sleeping, exhausted from the treatment. She looked so small in that bed, so fragile. Maya thought about that night 15 years ago, about finding a dying baby and saving her. About all the years since then, building a life together, creating a family from nothing. She'd saved Hope once. She had to do it again, but this time she couldn't do it alone. She needed help from someone who shared Hope's blood, someone who was out there somewhere, maybe not even knowing that the baby they'd thrown away was still alive, still fighting, still needing them. Maya pulled out her phone and updated the Facebook page. She posted a new photo of Hope in the hospital, looking pale but managing a small smile for the camera. She wrote, "This is Hope. 15 years ago, her biological mother left her in a dumpster and I found her and raised her. Now Hope is dying. She needs a kidney transplant and we're searching for any biological relatives who might be a match. If you know anything at all about a baby abandoned in Chicago in November 15 years ago, please contact us. Hope is running out of time." The post went viral overnight. Thousands of shares, tens of thousands of comments. Maya's phone exploded with messages. But most were just sympathy, people saying they were praying or hoping for a miracle. No real leads. No actual family members stepping forward. Maya was starting to lose hope herself when, 2 weeks later, she got a message on Facebook from someone named Claire. The message was simple. I think I might have information about your daughter. Can we meet? Maya stared at the message for a full minute before her hands stopped shaking enough to type a response. She'd received hundreds of messages over the past months, most from well-meaning strangers who'd seen something on the news, thought they recognized someone, or just wanted to offer prayers. None had led anywhere real. But something about this message felt different. It was brief, direct, and the sender's profile looked genuine, not like the fake accounts or attention seekers she'd learned to identify. Yes, please. When and where? Maya typed back. The response came within minutes. Tomorrow. There's a coffee shop on Maple Street called The Daily Grind. Does noon work? Maya confirmed, then sat back on Hope's hospital room chair. Hope was still sleeping after her dialysis session, her face peaceful despite the exhaustion. Maya didn't want to wake her, didn't want to get her hopes up about something that might be another dead end, but her heart was racing. Maybe, just maybe, this was the breakthrough they'd been desperately waiting for. That night at home, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept checking Claire's Facebook profile, trying to find clues about who this woman was and what she might know. The profile was private, showing only a profile picture of a woman in her mid-30s with dark hair and tired eyes. No mutual friends, no public posts. Maya tried searching the name with Chicago and the year Hope was born, but nothing came up. The next morning, Maya arrived at the Daily Grind 30 minutes early. She chose a table in the back corner where they could talk privately, ordered a coffee she knew she wouldn't drink, and watched the door. Every time it opened, her stomach clenched. At exactly noon, a woman walked in, looking around nervously. She matched the profile picture, though she looked older in person, worn down by something Maya couldn't quite name. Their eyes met across the coffee shop. Claire walked over slowly, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Maya? She asked quietly. Yes. Thank you for coming. Maya gestured to the chair across from her. Claire sat down but didn't order anything. She just sat there, hands folded on the table, staring at them like she was trying to find the right words. Maya waited, her heart hammering so hard she was sure Claire could hear it. I saw your post, Claire finally said. The one about Hope, about finding her 15 years ago. Do you know something about her biological family? Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Claire nodded slowly, then closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. I think she's my niece. I think her mother was my sister, Natalie. The coffee shop noise faded into background static. Maya leaned forward. Tell me everything. Claire took a shaky breath and began. Natalie was my younger sister. 15 years ago, she was 15 years old. We didn't have a good home life. Our father was, well, he was terrible. Very religious, very strict, very angry. Our mother had died when Natalie was little, so it was just the three of us, and Dad ruled the house like a dictator. She paused, wiping at her eyes. I was away at college when it happened. I was 21, had a scholarship, and I was finally away from that house. I didn't know Natalie was pregnant. She never told me. She hid it from everyone. How did you find out? Maya asked gently. I didn't, not for years. I came home for Christmas that year, and Natalie was different. She was quieter than usual, sadder. She wouldn't look me in the eye. I asked her what was wrong, but she just said she was fine. Then a few months later, Dad called and said Natalie had run away. He acted like it was good riddance, said she'd been nothing but trouble. I tried to find her, filed a missing person report, but the police said she was 16 by then. Probably just a runaway. They see it all the time. Claire's hands were trembling now. I didn't see Natalie again for 7 years. She showed up at my apartment one night thin as a skeleton, strung out on drugs. She was a mess, Maya. She'd been living on the streets, in and out of shelters, doing whatever she had to do to survive. I tried to help her. I got her into rehab, tried to get her clean, but she kept relapsing. What about the baby? Maya asked. When did she tell you about Hope? 3 years ago when she was dying. Claire's voice broke. She'd overdosed twice by then and her body was shutting down. She was in the hospital and she knew she wasn't going to make it. That's when she finally told me. About getting pregnant when she was 15. About being terrified of Dad. About going into labor alone in our house when Dad was at work. Claire wiped her eyes with a napkin from the dispenser. She said she didn't even know she was in labor until it was happening. She'd hidden the pregnancy so well that even she was in denial about it. When the baby came, she panicked. She was just a kid herself, scared out of her mind, bleeding and in pain. She wrapped the baby in a blanket and walked to the nearest store she could find. She said she put the baby near the dumpster where someone would find her, somewhere visible from the store, and then she ran. Maya felt tears on her own cheeks now. She left her near the dumpster. I found her inside it. Someone must have thrown trash in after she left, Claire said quietly. Natalie never knew. She spent the rest of her life thinking she'd left that baby somewhere safe, somewhere she'd be found quickly. The guilt ate her alive. It's part of what drove her to drugs, trying to numb the pain of what she'd done. Did she know the baby survived? Maya asked. Claire nodded. She went back the next morning early to check. The baby was gone and there was police tape around the dumpster. She heard people talking, saying a baby had been found alive. That's the only thing that kept her going for a while, knowing the baby had survived. But she never tried to find out more. She was too afraid, too ashamed. They sat in silence for a moment, both crying quietly. Maya thought about that 15-year-old girl, alone and terrified, making an impossible choice. She thought about Natalie spending years on the streets, drowning her guilt in drugs, dying without ever knowing what happened to her daughter. Why did you reach out now? Maya asked. Why not years ago? I only just saw your post 2 weeks ago, Claire said. I don't use social media much, but a friend tagged me in it, said it was in Chicago and I grew up here. When I read about the baby being found in a dumpster 15 years ago in November, I just knew it had to be Natalie's baby. The location, the timing, everything matched. And you think you might be a match? For the transplant? I don't know, Claire said, but I want to try. Natalie made me promise before she died to find her daughter someday, to tell her that her mother loved her, even though she gave her up, to tell her she thought about her every single day. I didn't know how to find her then, but maybe this is how. Maybe I can give Hope something Natalie couldn't, a chance to live. Maya reached across the table and grabbed Claire's hand. Thank you. Thank you for coming forward, for being honest, for wanting to help. Can I meet her? Claire asked. I know I'm a stranger and this is a lot, but I'd like to meet my niece. They arranged for Claire to visit Hope in the hospital the next day. Maya spent that night trying to figure out how to explain this to Hope, how to tell her that they might have found her biological family, that there was hope for a transplant, but also that her birth mother was dead and had lived a tragic life. When she told Hope the next morning, her daughter's reaction surprised her. Hope was quiet for a long time, processing the information. Then she asked, was she sad? My biological mother? Yes, sweetheart. I think she was very sad. Did she think about me? Every day, Maya said, repeating what Claire had told her. Every single day, Hope nodded slowly. I'm glad she didn't forget me, and I'm glad you found me instead of someone mean. When Claire arrived that afternoon, Hope was sitting up in bed looking small and nervous. Claire stood in the doorway, staring at Hope with an expression of wonder and grief mixed together. You look just like Natalie, Claire whispered. Same eyes, same nose. She was beautiful, and so are you. They talked for over an hour. Claire showed Hope pictures of Natalie as a teenager, before everything went wrong. Hope studied them carefully, looking for pieces of herself in this stranger who was her mother. Claire told stories about Natalie's childhood, about how she loved to draw and wanted to be an artist someday, about how she was kind to stray animals and always stood up for kids being bullied at school. She sounds nice, Hope said quietly. I wish I could have met her. She would have loved you, Claire said. She did love you, even though she couldn't keep you. Sometimes love means letting go. Maya watched this exchange, feeling grateful and heartbroken at the same time. Grateful that Hope was getting answers, getting to know something about where she came from. Heartbroken that Natalie had suffered so much, that she died never knowing her daughter grew up loved and safe. The DNA test came back 3 days later, confirming what they'd all suspected. Claire was Hope's biological aunt. The next test was the important one, the compatibility screening for the transplant. They'd have to wait a week for those results. Those 7 days were the longest of Maya's life. She tried to stay busy, to not think about it constantly, but every quiet moment her mind went back to those test results sitting in a lab somewhere, determining whether Hope would live or die. Claire visited every day. She and Hope were getting to know each other, building a tentative relationship. Claire brought more photos, some of Natalie's old drawings, a journal she'd kept as a teenager before everything fell apart. Hope absorbed it all, trying to piece together the story of the woman who'd given birth to her. On the 7th day, Dr. Chen called them all into her office. Maya held Hope's hand on one side, Claire sat on the other. Dr. Chen was smiling, which Maya took as a good sign. "Claire, you're a match. Not a perfect match, but a very good one. Good enough that we can move forward with the transplant." Hope burst into tears. Maya pulled her into a hug, crying too. Claire sat there looking stunned, like she couldn't quite believe it was real. "When can we do it?" Maya asked. "We'll need a few weeks to prepare, run more tests, make sure Claire is healthy enough to donate. But if everything checks out, we could schedule surgery within a month." As they left the hospital that day, Maya looked at Claire. This woman who'd shown up out of nowhere, who'd lost her sister to tragedy and addiction, who was willing to give a piece of herself to save a niece she'd just met. Maya didn't know how to thank her, didn't know if there were words big enough. "Claire, I don't know how we'll ever repay you." Claire shook her head. "You already did. You saved Natalie's daughter when she couldn't. You gave Hope the life Natalie dreamed of giving her. This is just me finishing what my sister started, making sure her daughter survives." But Maya was still thinking about something that had been nagging at her since Claire first told her story. Something about the timeline, about the location, something that didn't quite add up, though she couldn't put her finger on what. It would be another week before that nagging feeling crystallized into a realization that would change everything she thought she knew. The transplant was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Hope was stable enough on dialysis for now, and they needed time to run more tests on Claire, make sure she was healthy enough to donate a kidney. Maya took time off work to coordinate everything, shuttling between doctor's appointments and pre-surgery consultations. Claire had moved into their guest room temporarily, since she'd need help after the surgery too. It felt strange at first, having this woman who was basically a stranger living with them, but Claire fit into their lives more easily than Maya had expected. One evening, about a week before the surgery, Maya was going through paperwork to make sure all the insurance and medical forms were in order. Claire was helping Hope with homework at the kitchen table, and Maya could hear them laughing about something. She smiled, grateful that Hope had someone who shared her blood, someone who could tell her about where she came from. Maya pulled out the folder with all of Hope's old records from when she was a baby, everything she'd collected over the years. The police report from the night she was found, the hospital admission forms, the social services paperwork. She'd looked through these files 100 times, but something made her want to check the details again, to compare them with Claire's story. She found the police report and read through it carefully. The baby was found behind Meyer's convenience store on Morrison Street at approximately 9 p.m. on November 15th. Maya remembered that night like it was yesterday, even though it had been 15 years. The cold, the sound of crying from the dumpster, the terror of finding a dying baby. Morrison Street. Maya paused. Claire had said their family home was on the south side of Chicago, near the old steel mills. But Morrison Street was in a different neighborhood entirely, at least 4 miles away. Why would Natalie have walked that far with a newborn baby? Especially if she was bleeding and in pain after giving birth. Maya pulled out her phone and texted Claire. "Quick question, what was your old address? The house where you and Natalie grew up?" A few minutes later, Claire responded with an address. Maya plugged it into her phone's map. Her stomach twisted. The house was indeed miles away from where Hope was found, in the opposite direction from the hospital. It would have been a long, difficult walk for a teenager who'd just given birth. Maybe Maya was overthinking this. Natalie might have had her reasons for going to that specific location. Maybe she'd walked to a part of town where she thought more people would be around to find the baby, but something else was bothering Maya now. Another detail that didn't quite fit. She opened her laptop and pulled up the St. Catherine's Home for Girls records she'd requested a few years ago, when she was writing a memoir about her childhood. She'd wanted to look at old photos, remember the girls she'd grown up with. She'd scanned most of them into her computer. Maya scrolled through the files, looking for group photos from 15 years ago, from around the time Hope was born. There, a Thanksgiving photo from that November, all the girls lined up in front of the orphanage. Maya was in the back row, skinny and serious-looking, just 15 years old. She scanned the other faces, remembering some of the girls, forgetting others. Then she saw a face that made her heart stop. In the second row, partially hidden behind a taller girl, was someone who looked exactly like Claire. Same dark hair, same distinctive nose, same eyes. But this girl looked younger, maybe 16 or 17. And she was visibly pregnant, her belly round beneath a loose sweatshirt. Maya zoomed in on the photo, her hands shaking. She pulled up Claire's Facebook profile picture on her phone and held it next to the laptop screen. The resemblance was unmistakable. This pregnant girl in the photo could be Claire's twin, or more accurately, her younger version. But that didn't make sense. Claire had said she was away at college when Natalie got pregnant. She'd said she didn't know about the baby until years later. Why would there be a pregnant girl who looked exactly like Claire at St. Catherine's? Unless Maya's mind raced. Unless the pregnant girl wasn't Claire. Unless it was Natalie herself, and Natalie had been at St. Catherine's. Unless Claire's whole story was slightly off. Missing pieces that were suddenly clicking into place in Maya's mind. Maya quickly searched through more files. She found the roster of girls who'd lived at St. Catherine's that year. She scanned down the list, her heart pounding. There it was. Natalie Morrison, age 15, admitted August, left November. Natalie Morrison. Morrison Street. Maya's breath caught. She grabbed the police report again. The baby was found behind Myers' convenience store on Morrison Street. Myers was 3 blocks from St. Catherine's home for girls. 3 blocks. Oh my God. Maya's mind was spinning now, pieces falling into place so fast she could barely process them. Natalie hadn't walked miles after giving birth. She'd been at St. Catherine's. She'd probably given birth there or nearby. And Morrison Street wasn't random. It was practically right outside the orphanage, but that meant... Maya stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. That meant Natalie had been at St. Catherine's the same time Maya was. They'd lived under the same roof. They'd walked the same halls, eaten in the same cafeteria, maybe even talked to each other in passing. Maya had to be sure. She pulled out more records, searching for Natalie's admission paperwork. It took 20 minutes of digging through old files, but she found it. Natalie Morrison admitted to St. Catherine's in August after her mother died and her father was deemed unfit to care for her due to documented abuse. She was placed in the older girls' wing, ages 15 to 18. Maya had been in the younger wing. They'd been separated by age groups, rarely interacting except during meals or group events. But they'd been there together, and Natalie had gotten pregnant while living at the orphanage, had hidden it somehow, and then had left in November, right around the time Hope was found.